Hey, it's Sam. I'm making this video here from the Shivananda Yoga Ashram where I just taught a course on selecting auspicious times to do things. It was a great course this weekend. This week, the week of May 14th through the 20th, there's going to be major shifts. Using the sidereal zodiac, we have many planets changing signs and then going retrograde and whatnot. So the Sun, Jupiter, and Saturn will be changing signs this week. Saturn is going retrograde back into Virgo by the end of the week. Jupiter is moving into Taurus, and the Sun is also moving into Taurus this week. Now this brings an enormous emphasis on the Earth signs, which is about concentrating our energy on material things, which includes wealth and family and our values and value systems and feeling valued and respected. The other big thing is the ruler of Taurus, which is going to be holding 5 planets for a while. Venus is going to turn retrograde, and that's going to happen early in this week. And so Venus retrograde is going to have a pretty dramatic effect on relationships of all sorts, all kinds of relationships with people in your life. Could see quite a change by the end of this week. That's not even to mention that on May 20th, which is Sunday, May 20th, we're going to have a major eclipse in Taurus as well. So after Jupiter changes signs, after the Sun changes signs, after Saturn changes signs, and Venus goes retrograde, all that this week, then we have an eclipse. We top it off with this eclipse. So needless to say, this is a lot of focused energy and concentration on the sign of Taurus. Now, I said at the end of last year when I did a webinar on 2012 and the big changes this year, I specifically mentioned this cycle, this time right now in May, when there could be a time of big economic, at least in the global sense, big economic change and recalibration and readjustment and correction. So I think we're going to be seeing a lot of that with all these planets moving into Taurus and having this eclipse in Taurus, especially considering Jupiter is one of the planets, which is a planet of wealth. You see, Venus is a planet of contentment and happiness with what we have. Jupiter is wealth, like big, expansive wealth. So people who are really rich, for instance, that's a Jupiter thing, extreme wealth. Venus is more like contentment with what we have. That's the Venus principle. The Jupiter principle is enormous amounts of wealth. So this enormous amounts of wealth going into Taurus, we might even see like an increase, for instance, like in the stock market, or big financial gains, at least news about big financial gains, perhaps this week or the next couple weeks. It might not cut that way. It might show some big losses like right away also, because with Jupiter changing signs and the Sun changing signs, these often show periods of volatility and flux. I'm not a financial astrologer, by the way, but just because finances are going to be featured with the sign of Taurus, just looking at the trends, that could be a big trend this week. But beyond that, you'll see big news around financial interests one way or the other. But eventually, what this is going to do, because we do see that the south node Ketu is in Taurus, Venus, the ruler, is retrograde, Jupiter, the planet of wealth, like I said, will be in Taurus and getting an exact Ketu conjunction later this month. It's going to really show a correction and an adjustment in financial practices. I think global financial practices, we're going to see some major karmas ripening around, like all of the global financial pressure and stress that we've seen. We actually even saw this, we're seeing the hints of this already with the election in Europe and in France. They elected a new prime minister, president, I don't remember what he's called. And a lot of these things are obviously based on financial issues. And so we're going to see some major news, this is what I think, in the next couple months, as Jupiter begins a year-long transit through Taurus, Saturn has backed up into Virgo, which is also revisiting the economic policies from that began around the end of 2009, which coincided with a lot of the bank bailouts and all of that stuff that we did when Saturn went into Virgo. Saturn goes back into Virgo again from May until it's sometime in July or August. I don't remember off the top of my head, but this is going to also be revisiting a lot of those policies that were made then. And again, this big emphasis on earth signs is going to be important because Taurus is an earth sign, Virgo is an earth sign. That doesn't even mention the big eclipse that's coming in Taurus. So the fact that we have these energies coalescing around an eclipse shows that big movements are afoot. And so when we have eclipses, it creates a lot of volatile energy that can cut in many different directions, but you can at least expect that these issues are going to be changed and transformed. So my read on it is that a lot of the greed and selfish policies of things like the world monetary cartels, and those policies are going to be more and more exposed. Maybe not immediately, because eclipses take months and years to play out, actually. But in general, this is what's being worked on now with Ketu, Jupiter, Venus, the Sun, and all in Taurus when we have this eclipse. I'm going to do a much more detailed eclipse forecast, but I'm just also alluding to that foreshadowing of a correction in these policies, because Jupiter in Taurus is a placement that has a lot of greed potential. It's not just greed, it's expanding materially. So it can be expanding materially through things like, for instance, Ayurveda or holistic healing, bringing healing and teaching through things like the earth and roots and things of that nature, which also, by the way, these are also going to be important issues, not just financial stuff. I think we're going to see that as a matter of a policy correction or global correction, but we're also going to see an emergence and a reemergence of the need to connect with more holistic-based and earth-based solutions, which include a greater focus on ecology, taking back things like the food source, and looking at these international companies like Monsanto are the ones who are trying to limit our food choices, and an emergence or focus on things like herbs and holistic remedies and things that preserve the earth and that are more sustainable in the long term will become expanded, which is Jupiter. So the Ketu Jupiter in Taurus also has a great potential to concentrate and expand and grow these things that are of greater value, long-term value, especially because all of this is happening with the sanction of Venus, the ruler, there. Now Venus is going retrograde, which has a tendency to correct Venus issues, which has to do with, relationships with people, but also our relationship with the earth, our relationship with culture, with beauty, with nature. And it's going to create some disturbances and some reflection and some deep concentration, because Ketu, the south node, is also there. But eventually, it's toward a higher wisdom, because Venus is in its own sign. The sign of Taurus is supported because its ruler is there. Not only is the ruler there, but it's joined Ketu, the south node, which brings enormous skill, scrutiny, precision. So that's going to be dominating and ruling the darker forces, like, for instance, the greedy forces of Jupiter in Taurus. As these things are corrected and worked on, they're going to be channeled toward a higher, more wise outcome, because Venus, the ruler, is there. So I'll be talking more about this, but I just wanted to make this quick update, because this week there's a lot of big changes.